Welcome to a Two Bridges Art Academy watercolor demonstration. I'd like to give a profile watercolor portrait a try today. Here's my subject matter, this old gentleman here. And before I get going on the large final piece, I decided to work out some of my thought processes with a extra piece of paper here, what we like to call them thumbnails or sketches. And you see that there's not a lot of detail here to any of the likeness. I'm just thinking about the skin tones and the way I'm going to apply the paint, big shapes, how the light might hit it, and as I went through the transparent, semi-transparent, and opaque colors. I think I'm leaning towards using the semi-transparent colors where I can achieve the different depths to those skin tones there, the blues, the violets, the reds, the beiges, and everything else I'm seeing there in the final piece with the semi-transparent paint, which I have ready to go right here. I have since prepared my final piece of watercolor paper here with a light H pencil drawing to kind of, again, suggest this profile. There's not a lot of line work here. Just get the silhouette and the suggestions of where that nostril and that eye socket's going to be, and then let the paintbrush do a lot of the drawing for me. What you do see on the surface here is some FineLine Masking Fluit. And the nice thing about that is going to help me achieve some of those hair follicles that I'm seeing in the reference material here. I'm not going to worry about every single one of them. In fact, many of them will be, once I remove this at the end, I'll then glaze back over some of it to remove it so it won't be completely white. But I'd like to achieve the idea that some of these hair follicles will be done with the paper itself versus coming out back at the end with white paint, something I don't like to do. So my next step is going to put a nice wash of clean water on here and apply my semi-transparent paints, and immediately jump in from the light of his forehead down into the darker shadows of his cheeks and beyond, and then let it dry, and then continue the process over. Let's get going. So I covered my watercolor paper here with a lot of clean water. I then immediately went into placing down some alizarin crimson into my transparent yellow on my palette over here. And then I added some Winsor blue at the bottom here, and I went from top down. I started to just rough in the suggestion of where the skin tones are going to be. Remember, this is transparent, so multiple layers are going to be happening. I'm using a big cat's tongue paintbrush right here to cover a lot of space. And most importantly, what you'll see I'm doing is my forehead line right here along my nose and so forth, I'm overpainting. The nice reason I'm able to do that is because at the end I'll be able to come back in here and cut that dark color right in there and capture a nice little tight line right there, rather than trying to come up and stop here and then later on come up and butt those two together. Overpaint. You're allowed to do that, and it's highly encouraged. That way there's a nice consistent tone right across the forehead. So this is a wet into wet process right here. Right now I'm just trying to be as loose and as fast as possible. I'm not making any sort of real defined eye, nostril, so forth. None of that matters right there. I just get down some loose colors. Then I'm going to let it dry. I'm going to come back in for the second glaze, more colors, and then maybe the third one I'll start to define some detail. But be fast, and I'm being loose. So it's dry to the touch now. And I'm going to come in now and start to, again, with the transparency of watercolors, you can build upon this, and you can be able to see through the paint and still see the canvas or the watercolor paper underneath it. So in my palette here, I've mixed up some permanent rose, a little bit of French ultramarine, and then going back over to my transparent yellow off camera here, maybe a little raw sienna thrown in there too. And then once again, I'm going to continue to keep on track and deepen and darken these colors. I usually actually do most of my paintings in pretty much one brush, but in this case, I'm going to lean into maybe a flat brush. Might be kind of fun to see what effects I can get, because he's got a craggly look to him, and looking on capturing some of those different textures that might just kind of happen on their own as opposed to being overplanted. And once again, I'm over painting. I'm going to allow the paint to spill right off over his forehead here, and then transition into my permanent rose here to kind of darken up some of these spots. And you can do probably 6, 7, 8, 10 layers if you choose to darken them up. And the nice thing is the transparency, as long as you're using a lot of water and you're never trying to get too opaque. And of course, opaque means in this case where you're leaning into trying to really throw down a lot of pigment. Everything I have here has, I'd say, maybe 80% water and 10% pigment. That allows it to really set up. Come back in and get that air again. So it's going to be a back and forth process of just slowly but surely trying to build up those colors. And then finally at the later end coming back in with that at the very end opaque colors, because that's where I'll be able to define that eye and the eyebrow and the nostril right there, the dark eye socket, so forth and so on. You really want a good balance of medium light values in your painting, middle tone values, and then dark. And it doesn't happen until the end. Sometimes a painting looks kind of flat and boring. It's at the end when it really starts to pop. You're just going to wait it out. I've now switched to my opaque paints and have put in the last minute details on this with the darker values. And once I have that done, I'll remove my masking fluid to pull out some of those extra hair follicles and be done. Well, I think I'm all done. I've removed all of the masking fluid. I feel a little bit here and there. But I think if I keep messing with it, I'm just going to ruin it. So I think that'll be it. So what started off right here with my initial sketches. I was leaning towards that one. How'd I do? I think that's up for you to decide. So give transparent watercolors a try. They're a lot of fun.